I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee of Wednesday, February 1st, 2023 to order. It is 6 p.m. And first item on the agenda is public appearances, non-agenda items. We do not have anybody registered online or in chambers. Thank you, Scott. So we will move on to our first action item, which is action item 3A. Do I have a motion to approve resolution R-22-23 adopting the 2023 update to the ARPA/TID closure investment plan?
I move approval.
All right, Alder Wheeler, motion for approval. Misty, you're going to speak to this item first, and then we'll move it to Mayor Richardson and open it for discussion. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
All right, very good. The floor is yours.
Excellent. Let me share my screen quick. Lots of things happening at the moment. So the investment plan that we're talking about tonight is an update to the one that was adopted by council around this time last year. I'm not going to get into what's included in that. The mayor will talk about that after me. I just want to talk about some of the logistics pieces so that especially those at home can get access to the document, know where to find it, that type of a thing. So out on the city's website, if you go to government and then finance department, and then under the financial records and reports, this is where a lot of our documents are located. So all of the budget stuff you can see is all here. And then the second section is the ARPA TID closure investment plan. So we do have the adopted one from last year out here. The committee of the whole presentation that I gave last year that talked about, what this money was, we should use it for one-time purposes, that type of a thing, is still linked out here. And then the schedule that was adopted so people know what the next steps are, and then the actual plan itself is out here as well. When you're going through it, for the most part, it looks very similar to the document last year that was adopted. I did take out some of those appendices, so like the committee of the whole presentation, things like that, that were in there last year. I took those out because it felt duplicative to me. And then the other big thing to note that's different is the project summary items here. So now that this plan has been adopted, many of the projects have worked themselves through the CIP process or the budget process in 2022. We have a little bit better handle on what these actual projects are that are in there. So this is a summary of all of them with kind of the current estimate on what they're expected to cost and a very short status. So whether the project is in progress, it hasn't been started yet, the project's complete. So this summary is in here as well. So it's just another way to look at that data. For tonight's presentations, many of the department heads are here to answer any questions that the Finance Committee or Council has, but we aren't planning to go line by line or project by project through this investment plan unless one of you is interested. So we're here if that's what you would like, but we weren't planning to it off the bat. Last thing I have to say is that there is an introductory letter from the mayor in here, so I will turn it over to Aaron if you're okay with that, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'm fine with that, with handing it over to Mayor Richardson. Go ahead, Aaron. You have the floor.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Misty had it briefly up on there, the list of projects. You see some things are removed, but there's a reason why those are removed. Some of them are being done and already have been completed, or we found other funding sources for them. One of them I saw in there was the patio for the senior center. They did a great job finding sponsors and they raised some money for that, and we don't need to do that anymore. And I think, I'll get into this a little bit later, but also there were some things that were added last year that were kind of against the rules, if you will, in that they weren't one-time costs. They were projects that actually had long-term costs and ongoing costs. And that's one of the things that we talk about with this money is it really needs to be for one-time only projects. One of them that I removed, for example, was wanting to create a nursery for the city. That's not a one-time cost. There's ongoing cost to that, whether it's fertilizer, whether it's buying trees, whether it's, staff that has to take care of that, materials, mulch, whatever it might be. That's not a one-time cost. That's not what this is for. These really need to be one-time cost projects. I can just kind of a little bit of a reminder for people. This is money that came from a few different sources. One is ARPA, and then the other is closures of TIDs. We are closing a second TID, and so we actually have more money this year, which is great in here. But this is really it. We'll get a small amount of money closing the TID that's in the town of Madison. It's not a lot. I think I don't. Misty can say what that is for sure. My guess is that I'd be surprised if it was more than $50,000. So this is what we have going forward. And I'll tell you right now, we've updated a lot of information, and I'll get into that. But there's a lot of projects, and they're all great projects. So just a reminder for funding where that came from, first of all, is that, this is an investment plan investing in the city. Over $3 million came from the ARPA funds. That was a federal program that came out of COVID and the pandemic. And there's a lot of different uses for those. You can see these on here where it's eligible to be used. And we are using all those on various projects in here. So there are some restrictions, but it's a lot of money that's going to help pay for a lot of stuff. So that was a $3 million. We also are closing TID 6, or did close TID 6. I guess we are this spring. And there's about $1.6 million that we're adding to this from last year. So we do have quite a bit more money. This was Orchard Point, and so that's kind of Super Target, Verona Road, McKee Road area, very successful, very happy to see that. And so we're using that money this year, and so that's already in here. And then last year, when we did this for the first time, we had, actually, I don't know which one was closed. It says both of them were, I think 6 was last year, sorry. 4 is this year. And TID 4, that is the Highway 14 interchange over towards Promega, kind of along East Sherrill, and did a lot of great projects. That one's extremely successful, and about $4 million has actually been added from last year in here. We don't know the exact amount, but about $4 million. And so those projects, or that money is in here, is for projects as well. And the interesting thing is, we had staff go through, add projects where necessary, updated information. There's actually a lot of the money that's in this project plan, or investment plan, I should say, is actually updated information from last year. Just one example is you see in here, the tennis courts in McKee Park needed to be for a long time. Those are kind of our crown jewel tennis courts, the ones that we really need to make sure we're doing upkeep on. And the cost is a lot higher now that we've got a little more information than we originally had in here. It's actually about $767,000, which, to be honest, is not a surprise to me, because $165 was roughly what we were being quoted for some of the other tennis courts. They only had 2 courts. There's, I believe, 6 at McKee Farms Park. And so, yeah, it's about 3 times $165. So that actually makes a lot of sense. But we're doing the fencing, we're doing the playing surface, and it needs it. It's needed for a long time. So that's one. Park Shelter in Tower Hill, that's another one that we had $250,000 last year. It's actually looking more like $375. Costs of everything are going up. And so, that's the real challenge, is that it's going to continue to keep going up. And so we're trying to get as much as we can in here. All the projects are great, even things I didn't put on here. It's not saying those aren't great ideas. It's just that we have to have some things that don't make it. They can be added to a CIP, for example. But the reality is that even with not putting everything in here, I didn't put any of the ideas I had in here, to be honest. None of these are my projects. These are all things that came from staff. We're about $1 million over what we have available. So there's already $1 million of projects that we would love to do, but aren't going to be able to be funded this way. Maybe it's CIP, the operating budget. There might be other avenues for it. But the reality is that there's not enough money to do everything that we want in here. And I wouldn't be surprised if more things become more expensive in the next couple of years as we get more and more information and actually try to do some of those projects. So, it's just like last year. It's not like if you want to add a project for $100,000, you have to take away $100,000 of projects. However, we're already $1 million more than what we can spend. So, maybe you do want to look at that. Again, this is just the first step. From here, it goes to CIP. From CIP, it goes to operating budget. There's going to be other opportunities as well. But for this money, as you can see, we're way overspent right now. So, the process is the same as it is for everything. We're releasing this. You can ask questions. You can submit amendments, and then we'll vote on those amendments. And then this will actually be what gets funneled into the CIP, which comes pretty quick. I mean, that's really kind of that April, May timeframe. The next mayor is going to be working on that pretty quickly. So this helps inform that. And, it's something that it's the biggest challenge we have is the budget. And there's a ton of great things that we would like to do and want to do, but we don't have money for everything, unfortunately. And frankly, sometimes we don't have the staff to do it either. That's the other challenge is we had a lot of staff, but there's still enough projects here. If we had the money for, way more than what we have in staffing. So just kind of breezing through this, see if I missed anything on here. We did, like I said, we mentioned, all the stuff that was taken out. Some stuff it's because we already did. Some of the stuff it's just because of things like it's not a one-time cost. These need to be one-time costs. We violated that on a couple of amendments last year. That is an important piece of this because you're creating structural deficits. And even though people don't necessarily want to talk about it or understand and want to hear it, budgets are going to be a lot tighter than they've been. We've been very fortunate the last couple of years, but budgets are going to be tough, and there's a ton of needs. There's so many things that we want to do. And so you'll see that in the upcoming year as that comes out. Other than that, I think that's all I have right now. And, we can open up to any questions people might have. I'm not going to stick around too long, much like we've done with previous budgets. So it just kind of can drop off and let other people ask their questions and not have to worry about getting in the weeds too much. But staff is here if you have any questions. If there's anything kind of off the top, I'm happy to speak to those, but I don't want to get too involved in the discussions. That's really for all of you to do. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot of council members are here. Hopefully they're showing up late or they're going to just watch this later.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mayor Richardson. I do have some questions. I'm sure others that are here have questions as well. I'm going to start off with questions. I'm not sure if it's for you or for Misty Dodge. But the first question I have is the removal. Well, actually, it's under Project ID 02-04, the additional voting machines and election equipment. That particular item was removed, at least the status. Can you speak to that, Misty?
Yep, that was funded in a different way. So
Okay.
the city clerk was able to purchase the equipment needed to do the town of Madison polling location through that separate CIP fund. So it didn't need to duplicate.
Okay, very good. So it has been cared for. It's not something that we removed and don't feel what's needed, but it's been cared for. The other question I had was regarding, if I could find it here, Project ID 03-03, that's the broadband consultant assistant with strategic planning city match for other federal funds for implementation. That was removed. Was it just simply removed, or is there another plan?
So I can start here, and then Aaron's welcome to jump in if he has other thoughts, or Chad as well. So I know broadband is still a priority statewide, and I think there are a lot of state programs available that we could still tap into for that purpose, and felt that using that funding instead to continue our broadband initiatives might be a better avenue for us to get those done.
Okay. Yes, we have City Administrator Chad Brecklin as well. Go ahead.
I'll also add that, in staff's evaluation of the broadband issue here in Fitchburg, clearly there is areas where coverage is not great or it's not affordable for our residents. But one of the big challenges is to getting the telecommunications companies to address that. And we feel that probably perhaps one of the better ways to approach it is more on a regional level not only through the funding that Misty's mentioned through the state, but on a county basis, and trying to ideally, partner where appropriate with county representatives to try to move the needle where it can be moved. But I think it's safe to say right now it's a bit of a heavy lift particularly for local municipalities to try to make any sort of headway on that have coverage issues.
Yeah. That's what I suspected. I mean, at least in my conversations with Joyce Fry and Mike Zimmerman, and we've talked about from a CETA standpoint of possibly Dane County and their initiative. But to take it on ourselves, it is, as you said, it's a heavy lift. So, but I felt it was warranted as far as having that conversation here. So those are my questions. Questions, Alder Arata Frada, go ahead.
Misty, this is for you. On page 5, that in item or ID number 4, earmarks established during 2022 budget, we jump from $575,000 to $1.2 million. That one is included the tennis court?
Correct.
Okay.
So if we could use this one as an example, if people don't mind. So we have been focusing a lot on those summaries. The detail is also included in here, and for things that were either removed or the amounts updated, that was identified in these documents as well, hopefully.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, go ahead. I was looking at the document.
Yeah, I have another question about
Go
the
ahead. You have the
process.
floor.
So are we planning to review this process continuously during the year, or?
So the investment plan is what I would call a pre-CIP. So this is where council is simply narrowing the scope for the projects you want staff to continue to look at. That's why it's okay that there's more projects identified in here than what we actually have money available, because you're just kind of saying, there's a million different things you can do. We want you to focus on these 40. So this is a very preliminary kind of narrowing that scope. From here, it goes into CIP, and certain of those projects that are capital related will be fleshed out more in the CIP process, just like we did last year, and then it would be the budget after that. So this particular document will only get updated about this time next year as things are continued to be refined, but the prioritization will happen through the CIP and the budget process during 2023.
May I add to that, Misty, can you confirm that I'm speaking appropriately here in process? But I assume if there's any sort of project that would be accepted under this latest round in the investment plan that we would begin in 2023, we would do a budget amendment, much like we did last year for some of those projects. Is that correct?
Exactly right. So just like last year, there were certain ones that we wanted to move a little quicker. If there's some new ones or things that didn't make it in the 23 budget, we may bring that forward to council to consider early starts on some of those. But again, that would be a council resolution. You would have that decision at that point.
Very good. Alder Arata Frada, you had another question.
Yes, another question about process. So you mentioned that some of the items here, they qualify for CIP, but there are other ones that don't qualify for the CIP. So maybe we should kind of like put another list. You know what I mean? Like, even though, we have in excess more project here, but some of them we cannot allocate in the CIP because
they're not capital? Yep.
So,
Yeah. I could go through the next round. I can make a note for next year when we update, and maybe I just note if it's a CIP or an operating budget item. That's easy enough to do.
Very good. Any additional questions, discussion? Do we have any alders online?
You do.
Oh, yes, Joe is there. All right. Just want to make certain that I'm not missing anyone that would like to speak. So.
Yes, I'm online. I'm in the middle of a couple things, but I'm listening.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. Seeing no additional questions or discussion, I guess I
Turn it back over to me.
turn it
if you
back
don't
over to
mind.
you. Yes.
Yes. So if we're at this point, so right now we're still doing that information gathering stage. So this was referred out to every committee, commission, board, et cetera, that had a meeting between when council referred it out at the last meeting and when this is adopted in March. So there'll be a lot of chance for all of your other committees and such to provide their input. What happens then is the liaison, so the council liaison for that committee, or really any other council member, would make a choice on whether or not they wanted to submit an amendment based on that council or committee or whatever recommendation. The amendment process is the exact same as what we do with CIP. So you as council members will have the ability to submit amendments. I believe I emailed that document out to you. If not, I will make sure I do that shortly. It's an Excel document that I ask you to fill out. Keep it very brief and high level. Remember, this is not a budget document. This is a pre-plan document, so very bullet point kind of related. Those amendments are due on March 1st. We'll turn them around in about a week to go out onto the website. We'll have another public hearing, and then we'll go through the amendments one by one and vote them up or down, just like we would at CIP time. And then at the end of the meeting on March 14th, we'll have an adopted investment plan that will then roll into the first version of the CIP that's provided to the mayors for their consideration. So very similar process to what we've done in the past. If you have questions or if there's ways I can help, definitely reach out. More than happy to assist.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for the detailed explanation, similar to last year. But any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving on to item 4, announcements. The next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for February 14th, 2023. Any additional announcements? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move adjournment.
All right. We have a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry? Oh, was there? Can I ask a question? Sure. If I guess before we adjourn, yes, go ahead.
I thought that we were planning to go through some of those. No?
No.
Okay. Okay. No, because I saw all the people, all the head of the department there, so.
Yeah, so I asked the department heads that had projects in the plan to be available in case you guys did have questions for them. But if you don't have questions, we're
Yeah.
happy to go home
I
early.
think you outlined that early on, and then the mayor also mentioned it, but yeah.
Are there any specific questions you may have right now since we have
One
folks?
second, I am going through because I read this last week, so I made
Sure,
notes.
yeah.
So. 1 second.
You would also be able to reach out to any of the department heads if you have questions about their projects, or myself included, if you have
Since we do have a
questions.
motion on the floor, may I ask Alder Wheeler to rescind that motion?
That's a good idea.
Yeah. I'll move
You
to
rescind,
rescind.
move to rescind? All right. Thank you.
My question was about maybe Scott can answer that, about the tennis court. Why was the increase so high from $165,000 to $700,000? So I want to know more the details. Do you have an actual bid for that?
An actual what,
Bid.
Julia?
A bid, do you?
We've actually have done some preliminary work with a tennis court designer, and actually there's a couple different treatment options that we're considering with the goal of, in regards to budget, up to a 50-year budget time frame, and certainly with the different types of application, you're going to have an average for each year for the 50 years. So those are some of the things that we're taking under consideration. But we're continuing to, and it does include $100,000 budgeted for the fence. So I guess we're continuing to try to define what staff's recommendation is, but we're taking it, I guess, under the lens of a 50-year investment and how many, what annual dollar amount is going to go to the treatment that we're recommending.
Scott, is it not also a resurfacing? It just goes beyond the fence, not?
Yep, it is a resurfacing. There's actually 3 different three different methods that we're considering. A tile system is one. It's called a turf with color over aggregate is another type of system. And then post-tension concrete is a third option that staff is considering.
I would add, if I may, that I would maybe semantics here, but this is really a reconstruction. Yeah. We're going to have to rebuild these courts entirely. The fences are going to need to come down. The court's going to have to be completely tore up. It is beyond repair. So all of the solutions that Scott has offered now are really reconstruction of the tennis courts, entirely new playing surface, and new fencing, again, with looking at a 50-year term amongst the three options. That doesn't necessarily mean that those options will last 50 years without any sort of maintenance, but that's kind of the term that the consultant that we've been working with who specializes in tennis court construction has given us for information.
Thank you. Thank you for the explanation. Alder Rutherford, did you have additional questions?
Yes. On page 15, group number 5, there is a new project called Long Range Planning for the Delivery of Fire and EMS Services. What is the objective with this plan?
Well, there's been some conversation lately. Mayor Richardson has mentioned it on a couple of occasions through the budget process about the potential need for a referendum. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that staff would like the council to consider prior to going to referendum is what path the council is looking to fund through that referendum. And perhaps it would be appropriate to determine what path our fire and or EMS service provision would be on. Is that staying on the same path that it has been on, or is it on a different path? I would think if the council elects to go down a referendum path, they would want to make sure they're communicating a clear goal and vision to our public and our voters, and not looking to fund one particular path in the short term and then soon thereafter changing to a different path.
I have another one.
Sure, go ahead.
On the same page, this is for comprehensive plan update. This is going to be done internally, or we are trying to do outsource this because we have we are looking for money.
We would need to outsource that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and in looking at all that's happened in the last 5 or so years since the last major comp plan update, it may be appropriate again for the council to consider updating that in the very near future based upon what we're hearing for current needs within the city for areas to be considered for potential development, as well as some of the existing areas that were originally identified 5 years ago for development, kind of running out of available locations right now.
Deanna just jumped on too,
Okay.
if she has anything to add.
I have another one.
I'll just pipe in a little bit. Chad's exactly right. And one of the things that is continuously popping up in our world in the planning department is just the changes and stressors in the agricultural side of what we do. And there's been a lot of changes in the economics or social changes. And I would like the opportunity, if council thought so, to revisit especially the agricultural side of our comprehensive plan in the next short term. Yeah.
I have another one.
One more?
Yeah, I have. So the other one is zoning and sign code update. So those one, what is the time frame for all of that? It's like 2023, 24, 25. What is each? And there is another one in page 16 is the ordinance. So that one, what is the time frame? To have an idea.
Deanna, do you want to start with the zoning and sign code?
Yes, I can. I am hoping later next year that we could retake a look at the zoning ordinance, especially as we get towards the end of wrapping up the 2 neighborhood plans. So I would really like to take a look at the zoning ordinance. We are in desperate need of an update and making sure that the zoning code aligns with city goals and directions.
Thank you.
And I would just add on that as well that, things like our sign code, we know that they need to be updated to comply with some recent court cases. And, maybe what is more contemporary in our signage in our society these days as well. I would say that both of those are probably at least a couple years past update. And I know that staff capacity and timing is a consideration as to why Deanna has mentioned later next year for that. And in regards to the ordinances, you can find them all online, of course, but it's my recollection, and don't quote me exactly on the date, but I think the last time we did a full assessment of our ordinances was about 2009 or 2010. So enough has probably changed in the last 12 years that it's probably time to take another look at those. I know neither of those things are necessarily really exciting projects, but those are kind of some of the foundational things that we're faced with as a city that kind of present the guidelines that folks need to follow.
Another one?
How many more do you have?
I
just, you have to say more than just one more. I keep thinking that's the last one. Go ahead.
yeah, this is the meeting to discuss this. So the other one, new in 16 is a referendum feasibility. Do you have any idea what is the plan for when? I don't know who is in charge of this one.
Was that the referendum?
Yeah.
So, again, that's also something that the current mayor has mentioned, and I don't see the need for a potential referendum going away anytime soon based upon the current financial constraints that the city operates under. And I think this will be, again, something that the city council may wish to consider in the very near future. And if the city council ultimately were to look to do a referendum and begin planning for that, it's my understanding and information and talking with other communities who have done referendums that you need outside resources in order to collect and be able to present that information to the voters. So we wanted to at least have this as an option so that if the council elects to proceed with a referendum, there are resources available to do that.
Can I ask and
Go ahead.
So who has to bring forward that referendum? Is the council, the mayor, or two elders, or the city administrator of the neighbors?
No, certainly not the city administrator. He or she can make advice and recommendations, but ultimately, I need to do a bit more research on exactly what that process looks like. But pure speculation at this point would be much like any other action. The mayor or two alders would sponsor a resolution that would direct a referendum to be placed on the ballot. But again, I'll be looking at how that process exactly works and sharing that with the council if you have a desire to talk about that in the near term.
Thank you.
Additional questions or discussion?
I got a question now.
Yes, Alder Wheeler.
So when will the money have to be spent? Because just looking at the resolution, if we need a resolution, I mean, there's some other things I think that would have to happen first. Now, if we've done a strategic plan and also our organizational review analysis. So will we have enough time to actually spend money on a referendum, trying to get all those done and using ARPA money?
So not with ARPA money, likely. So possibly. ARPA money needs to be obligated by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. The TID closure money, however, is unlimited. So council can choose to spend that as fast or as slow as you would like.
Additional questions, discussion? Hearing none. We will move on then to, I've already mentioned the next meeting, which is February 14th, 2023. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move adjournment.
I have a motion to adjourn. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. We are adjourned officially at 6:35 PM. Thank you.